Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode on the Teens for Business podcast. I'm your host, Ivan.
I'm Jack.
I'm Jackie.
I'm Kylan.
Today, we'll be discussing the business of the Las Vegas casinos, especially on the Strip. So, there are many notable Las Vegas hotels located on the Strip, which includes Caesar's Palace, MGM Grand Paris, which is famous for the replica of the Eiffel Tower, Flamingo, and famous for flamingos. Bellagio, which is famous for their water fountain display, and much more other famous hotels. And what is not known for a lot of people is that most of these very famous hotels located on the strip is mostly owned by MGM Resorts and Caesars. And one of those companies, MGM Resorts, has reported $2.1 billion in Q2 net revenues of this year, and is to only think that it's only a fourth of the year, which is crazy. And Las Vegas by itself is an extremely lucrative business, as there are many different business opportunities, especially with F1 Formula One coming to Las Vegas, I think next year. And then also the recent uh, new deal at Las Vegas, which is the Sphere, which is a really big else like a sphere that displays a lot of stuff and has obtained a lot of attraction and popularity, especially in Las Vegas. So, what do you guys think is the economic significance of the casino industry in Las Vegas, and how does that contribute to the city's overall economy?
Yeah, I feel like just to take this question first, I feel like the casino industry in Las Vegas is super impactful and relevant. So I went to Vegas during like my winter break last year, and obviously like being underage and just like I'm not really into any of that stuff, but most of the hotels that you walk in, like their ground floor was all just casinos, and there were just always a lot of people there, like no matter what time of day you got there. Like I think we got there at like in the morning for one of the days. That's like kind of when we checked in, and there were still a lot of people in the casinos. It was like 10 a.m. and people were still very much there. And I actually watched this video a while ago, but BuzzFeed Unsolved, like the point was about something else, but they had like this really interesting video about how the Vegas casino industry kind of popped up. And so I think like when people think Vegas, they think casinos, they think gambling and everything that comes with that. So obviously there's a big cultural and economic impact. And I think there's a lot of data that also shows like GDP wise, that gambling, casinos, things like that bring in a lot of money for like these tourist attractions in Vegas. And then also because like gambling is so big, like casinos are so big, like obviously you can't just like drive there and like gamble for a night and then leave, or like that's not what most people do. So like then like the hotels are also super big too, and like they kind of just like feeds into that cycle.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Just going off of that GDP point, actually, visitor spending in Las Vegas accounted for or about half of Las Vegas's GDP in 2022, with a spending of around $80 billion. And that is a lot of money, and that definitely contributes to like how like Las Vegas has definitely grown throughout the years. We have to think back to like for like 1931, where Nevada was legalized gambling, becoming the first and only state to do so. And like not many other states like did that during that time, and it allowed the Las Vegas like gambling industry and just in Nevada in general to like grow significantly and allow it to be like, I guess, what you call the gambling capital of the United States or potentially the world. You could say that. So definitely gambling has a big effect on tourism. You can, and also gambling is having a big economic impact on Las Vegas. Just like think about like it attracts like so many people just because of like the nature of gambling. Like you could win like a lot of money that you could get like a really big rewards off the risk, and that has definitely contributed to like how gambling has become such a big part of like Las Vegas, and a big, and gambling obviously has a really big impact on Las Vegas's and Nevada's economy in general.
Yeah, just to add on to what Jack said, I think what he said was kind of spot on about like tourism as well. I think this is not, it's not only the fact that the casinos and like the gambling industry but you also got to think about the money that it brings in just from like tourism, with so many people visiting the city to gamble just to have fun as well. With Vegas being a major tourist location, it's gonna add on to like the hotel and hospitality industry as well as like the different entertainment events that Las Vegas has. It just makes the city a lot more vibrant with just how much with how much money people will spend there in general. Like people go to Las Vegas, it's like what they say is like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? They go all out when they're there and just spending a lot of money, and that's gonna grow. That's how a city grows, and that's why they're like so successful right now with so many different hotels and stuff.
Yeah, just
Yeah, I
like
think like
oh,
oh sorry, I
you can
just
go
want
ahead.
really quick. So during the COVID pandemic, we all saw like Vegas had a huge impact, or like it got impacted a lot. And there's like statistics about it, how there was like employment rate was above 30 during the pandemic. And I think like that just kind of goes to show how big of an impact tourism and like the gambling industry, casinos have on Vegas, because if they weren't important, like the employment rates, the like the percentages of how well like their GDP is doing, like that wouldn't exist. Like if gambling, casinos, etc. weren't important to the area, then like they wouldn't have that big of a negative impact if you couldn't go during COVID. I think like Vegas as a whole, like specifically the strip, because like there are like residents who don't live there only because of the casinos. Like residents obviously they still are there, but for Vegas and the strip specifically, like tourism and casinos definitely are there because that's kind of what they're known for. That's just what they do. Like that's their branding at this point. So
Yeah, exactly. And a significant problem Las Vegas faced is definitely, as Jackie mentioned, during the pandemic, where unemployment soared, and it was one of the highest in the country because the economy of Las Vegas is so dependent on the strip, which only thrives through when people are allowed to go there. And during the pandemic, everything shut down, and people weren't going to these casinos, people weren't living in the hotels, people weren't using the hospitality services, and people lost jobs, the hotels were losing money, etc. So it was a really big impact towards Las Vegas economy. So obviously casinos are a really big thing in Las Vegas and the strip, but gambling by itself has a lot of ethical issues. So how do you believe like casinos are regulated in Las Vegas? And do you think that these regulations are effective, or should there be more things that the government or some sort of agency should regulate in or prevent people going there and spending all their life savings on gambling?
yeah, I think that's like a pretty complicated question, because there's aspects of, do you just let people do what they want with their money because that's kind of what is happening, or do you have to step in and make sure they are being responsible? And I think like Vegas does, like they do have regulations in place, and for instance they do have to have licenses. Hotels specifically, you can't just open a casino and be like, yeah guys, come and gamble if you want. Like you have to obtain your licenses, you have to make sure go through a set process to make sure you're not really deliberately making someone spend their entire life savings because they're just like trying one slot machine and it's not working out for them. So I think those regulations definitely do need to exist, making sure that like the games, like the slot machines, are winnable to some extent. Like that you're not just completely rigged against the player and like them losing everything that they have. Um, and I think like in terms of regulations and things like that, historically regulations have tightened up as time goes on, or they have like loosened up comparatively at the beginning, because when Vegas first started getting big, I guess, like the people chose Vegas because their government specifically didn't completely outlaw gambling, or like there wasn't very strict comparatively laws about it. Like right next to Vegas, Nevada, is California, and at the time California had pretty strict laws against things like this. So that's kind of like where you see like those trends and like how it's evolving. And I think like the laws involving kind of depend on time and what the culture is like. So it's really difficult to say like how they're going, like where they will go. But just looking at history, I think is always really interesting to think about like how a culture has shifted, and like how do you make sure what you're doing aligns with the culture, and how do you do it ethically?
Yeah, I definitely agree, especially with like the license point, like companies that operate casinos in the Las Vegas area. I think there's like a regulation that they have to always have the like license to operate legally, and you have to obtain those licenses from like I guess like the board that really controls. So like casinos in Las Vegas are regulated by the Nevada Gaming Control Board, which sets the day-to-day and like enforcement of like gaming laws and regulations. And while also the Nevada Gaming Commission is also a part of that, and it is responsible for setting gaming policy. So it's definitely very important for those gambling like companies to make sure that like they're like I guess like the profit making like practices are like safe, and they're not like just scamming people by rigging their games, making it really like low risk to like win. And these regulations have definitely like evolved over time, as Jackie did mention, like Las Vegas and like Nevada in general, like it was one of the first states to open like gambling up to the public. All the states around it used to have very stringent gambling laws, and we as gambling like opened up, some of these restrictions have I'm not too sure. I personally think they've gotten more like looser, but there's also like a lot of restrictions still on gambling today, just to make sure that like people don't like spend their like life savings, because obviously these life savings impact like a lot of people. Like not only do they impact like the person, but they might impact like the family and like the close friends that like rely on these savings. So I think so far, I think the regulations, I'm not too sure on the specific regulations, but I think they're doing a decent job of like controlling controlling like people's like willingness to spend all of their like life savings on gambling, no matter how good the payoff may be.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I just think that, but I mean, as of right now, I think they're doing a solid job of just kind of like making sure, just like controlling everything. I think, we mentioned like the Nevada Gaming Control Board. I think they're like the primary like regulatory group kind of responsible for kind of overseeing things, and they're actually appointed by the governor. So it's like very important. It's a 3-member board, and then they kind of overview everything in terms of the gambling and like their policies and stuff. But it's also like in terms of each of the individuals and like the vendors for that provide these gambling machines, they all have to be licensed as well. And I feel like it's important, like inside these casinos for like surveillance and security and stuff like that as well. So I think overall they're doing a pretty good job, just like making sure people are like gambling responsibly in a sense, and like just being able to protect both the people as well as like the companies as well. I think overall they're doing fine right now.
Yeah, definitely. And it's good that we have left the days where people or the Las Vegas hotel owners would take people to the back and like torture them to get back their money. But that's sort of the thing that's regulated by the government now, not by the casinos themselves, which is in my opinion better. So moving on, since like online gambling, especially with the pandemic and recent controversies with Twitch streamers promoting these online gambling platforms to the young audience, and it seems like there's competition rising on the horizon for these Las Vegas casinos. As for the people who go to Las Vegas to gamble, would probably prefer using these online gambling platforms where you can play blackjack or poker, Texas Hold'em, everything online in front of your computer instead of like driving to Las Vegas or flying to Las Vegas and playing those machines there. So what do you feel like about this competitive landscape, and do you think did these Las Vegas casinos do about it?
I think the competitive landscape, I guess, has just gotten like a lot more competitive in general. Like, obviously, a result of the COVID pandemic was like a lot of like online casinos, and online gambling is probably most likely going to limit like Las Vegas's like dominance and like gambling, because like some people just simply go to Las Vegas just to gamble, and as a result, maybe they invest in like real estate there, and potentially that real estate is like super expensive. And then, but now since due to like the online gambling, they don't need to spend that much money on like the strip or something doing like tourism. They can just gamble from home or something like that. And maybe in that case, like due to this online gambling, they might even like move away from like Las Vegas or something like that. And that will like negatively that'll definitely negatively impact like the Las Vegas like I guess just the competitiveness of the gambling industry there. And yeah, so basically I think that the online like gambling industry will definitely give the Las Vegas like competitive like gambling like industry landscape a little bit of a hard time. But so far, I don't think like the Las Vegas like gambling industry has taken a really big hit yet, but that might change in the future.
Just to talk about that really quickly, Jack, I think I definitely would agree with you. Like, like more accessibility online. Like, if I'm in Maryland and if I were like, like of the age and I just really wanted to gamble, I could just hop online and do that instead of going to Vegas and having that. But I think another big part about it is like people aren't really going to Vegas only like 100% solely to gamble, just to like be like, okay, I'm gonna like put my money in a slot machine and I hope I can get like make money off of that. I think it's also like people who go, yes, they want to gamble, yes, they want to go to casinos, all of that, but at the same time, it's a lot about the atmosphere, right? Like there's a reason why Vegas is kind of like this hot spot for gambling. Like, why can't you just go to the middle of like Arkansas to go to a casino if that exists, right? I think the atmosphere and like the vibes, the popularity, and everyone's just very much like into it. Like the atmosphere is very good for having fun at that point. That's still definitely very prevalent, and like you don't really get that as much if you're just gambling online, if you're just going onto a website and being like, yeah, I'm going to play blackjack online, right? Like you still might be making money, you still might be making like the same decisions in your head, but a lot of people are going to Vegas because they think it's super fun combined with this like gambling or casino perspective. But also I think like even though we said like casinos and gambling have a very big impact on Vegas and tourism, at the same time, like it's not only there because of casinos. Like I think originally it kind of started up for a place for casinos and gambling, but now because it's become such a big hotspot and like tourism place, there are a lot of people who go who don't gamble or like aren't into that or like are underage, things like that. Like there are families going, there are like younger children there, obviously not to gamble, but because like that is one of the most popular tourist destinations or vacation spots to go to. So it's not 100% tourism, but also like the vibes for people. It just like can't really be replicated online. So there probably will be impacts, but it won't be like anything drastic.
Yeah, I personally think that like just considering like online gambling or like sports books like DraftKings and whatnot, I think that yeah, just like I've seen a lot of people love sports gambling just on their phones or like just because of the ease of it. But like Jackie mentioned, like the reason people go to Las Vegas isn't just solely to gamble, right? They have they go there to a lot of time as vacation, and like they go not only to gamble, and that's what makes the Las Vegas experience what it is. But I do think that as like the ease of just simply gambling where you are, I think that it does bring some sort of like some competition um to these like actual casinos. I just don't think that people need to be like going there anymore. If you just want to gamble, you just want to like gamble a little bit of money, then I do think that there's a lot of reason for people to simply like just use these online apps and things like that instead of going to Las Vegas.
Yeah, so especially with competition, like what Jackie said, uh, Las Vegas is not only casinos, it's also hotels, it's also these shows that are really popular. Like, I'm pretty sure there's like a bunch of shows that people just go to Las Vegas just to watch. And the hotels, like these casinos are owned by the hotels, and even though casinos are like the number one money generator for these hotels, number two, very closely is the hotel itself. Like people live in these hotels. They live in these hotels and they go and gamble too. And so it's important to not forget about, another all of our services like the bars, the people serving the food, stuff like that. And that also earns a lot of money. And the hotels itself, they have their own specialties. Like I remember when I went to Las Vegas, I think I kind of gamble. I don't think my parents did gamble a lot. I think they did like for one night for like an hour only. But most of the time we spent there was going visiting all the different hotels, checking out, the different niches they have, like the flamingos. We saw the flamingos and like the really big pyramid hotel, and then like the castle. Like these are things people go, especially with families. They go and they don't gamble. They go and look at these stuff and spend money on those stuff. And moving on to another point, which is also very important in Las Vegas, and Las Vegas actually is one of the best cities at doing this in the United States, which is environmental sustainability. So, what efforts are being made by these Las Vegas hotels and casinos to promote some sort of like environmental sustainability? And are they doing things such as like reducing energy consumption or reducing waste?
Yeah, I think like that point's extraordinarily important because like like environmental sustainability itself is important, but also because if you think about like the geography of Vegas and like the strip, it's all like the total area for like land, it's not like that big. Like yes, it's big, but like compared to how many people are there, how many like buildings are there, it's very like densely together. And like that's kind of where you have to like make sure you're doing a lot because if you're like that small of a landmass, but you're producing a lot of like waste, like that's just not great, you know? So which is why Vegas kind of started doing all of that. And for Vegas specifically, like MGM hotels and casinos, they installed solar panels to get the energy that way. And because there are so many people in like this relatively smaller piece of land on the strip, it's just like they use a lot of energy. So you kind of have to make sure that like the energy you are using has to be used like sustainably and you're not just wasting it and letting it go like having any leakage like that. So that's very important for that part. And I think when I went to Vegas, which was like I don't know, like a year or two ago, but there was like a lot of efforts and there was like active construction or like things like that within hotels where they were constantly trying to renovate and they were constantly trying to make their buildings, I guess, like their attractions be more environmentally friendly because that's kind of how they're developing. And if we really think about it, for Vegas itself, like most people, when they go to Vegas or like specifically the strip, they're going because of the hotels. Like Ivan mentioned before, like they're going because of something in the hotel, whether it's casinos, whether it's the flamingos, whether it's anything else, they're going because of like these buildings, right? And if your buildings aren't like environmentally sustainable, if they're not like up to date and like renovated, modern, things like that, people aren't going to want to go to like some rundown old building who's like using a bunch of energy and like they're just not updated with the newest technology. Like that's just not that like people don't really want to go to that. So I think that's also another reason why they're so focused on making sure like their buildings specifically are very good at all of these new tech and like very modern with their technology.
I definitely agree, and I also kind of like want to address this from like a different perspective. So like like Las Vegas is located in the middle of the desert. It's very dry, and therefore some people when they visit there or like live there, they need to like use a lot of water, and obviously that's a good thing because I think less than 100 miles away from Las Vegas is Lake Mead and the Hoover Dam, which was built during the Great Depression and actually was a tourist attraction for some time, but it provides like a lot of water to Las Vegas. So that kind of like really helps like Las Vegas with their like I guess like energy consumption, like water consumption. And we've definitely seen that come into place. Like some casinos like MGM, like they return 75% of the water they use to they return the Lake Mead and then they're reused again. And also like I read it in an article that like 90% of the water used in the shark reef at Mandalay Bay is also returned to Lake Mead for reuse. So obviously like more and more of these like casino companies are using like their nearby water resources for like reusing and like just like energy like consumption, which I definitely think could be a right step in the future for environmental sustainability for the companies along the strip and just in Las Vegas in general.
Yeah, I think many companies are like kind of committing to being more energy efficient. And just an example of that, like Jack mentioned, like MGM Resorts, I think they've set a goal to kind of reduce their energy consumption by 20% by 2025. And a lot of these different casinos, not only MGM, including like Wynn or like Caesars, they've all kind of like implemented different like programs to promote environmental sustainability across all of the casinos that they manage and all of the hotels that they manage as well. It's just kind of like they are committed to better like energy efficiency and utilization, and that includes like using solar and things like that. I just think that these companies are doing a solid job of becoming more energy sustainable.
Yeah, and moving on to a next point is something that we kind of touched on before, especially talking about the effect of the pandemic on Las Vegas, which is employment and people working at these Las Vegas Strip businesses. So, what do you guys think is the impact, or how the size of the impact of the casino and hotel industry on employment in Las Vegas? And is there anything you believe that the casinos or hotels are addressing labor issues and promoting fair employment practices, or do you think they should possibly do more?
Yeah, I think because Vegas is so like tourism heavy and almost like service heavy, there is a bunch of opportunity for job creation and things with the economy like that. And one of the things is like in 2019, 25% of Vegas residents were employed in like the casino industry, so like tourism, things like that. And I think like that's a very big portion of people. Like if you go to a non like so much of a touristy location, like if you come here to Maryland where I am, I guarantee you 25% of the population is not involved in tourism. And I think that's pretty standard for other states as well. So like Vegas is very incorporating their residents, I think is a good way to say it. And also like that statistic of 25% is very much for like casino industries, but that doesn't really include other parts of like service, right? So the restaurants on the side, the other services, all the other shops, they're not technically in the casino industry, right? And they definitely do have a lot of like impact, and there are a lot of jobs because of like the entire strip, like that commotion right there. And also because like with any other tourist destination or like popular place, like there's just a lot of opportunity for job creation in so many other markets. Like there's a lot of like taxis, Ubers, things like that that people can take advantage of. And I think specifically with Ubers, because of their business model, like people can just, when they're going home from work, even though like they might have a different job that's not like the strip related, they can still like have like be an Uber driver for people who are going to Vegas because of tourism. And I think that's just a very big reverberating effect across their entire like local economy, which is really, really important. And I think that kind of you get to see that in like statistics, and you get to see that in the way people think, and just culturally, economically, that all has an impact on itself. So
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like just in that like 25% of like Las Vegas residents employed in casino industries, although that doesn't like include like people who work in like hotels, restaurants, bars, something like that, they still open like a ton of like opportunities for like labor. And like a lot of like casinos like are now opening these hotels and like restaurants. It's kind of like a little bit of a cultural shift, but it's definitely going to open a lot of job opportunities. And that's why Las Vegas, like their unemployment rate is tends to be lower than like the national or like average like unemployment rate. But that could also be like a bad thing. Like as we saw during like the COVID-19 pandemic, like the tourism industry in Las Vegas was like completely shut down. And as a result, like all of those they had the companies had to like cut their costs, and part of that was like labor costs. So obviously some people were like laid off, and that was obviously a really bad thing. And it like shot up the unemployment rate. So I guess like the impact of the tourism industry really like contributes to the employment and like labor practices in Las Vegas. And like any like big fluctuations or like I guess like big like events that could like negatively affect the tourism industry in Las Vegas will also have a really large impact on the I guess like employment scenario in Las Vegas.
I just wanted to kind of touch on like the pandemic, the effect the pandemic had and how like these casinos are recovering. I just think that in terms of the pandemic, it was a really large and dramatic like effect on these companies, because people couldn't go physically into these casinos and gamble anymore, and that's a large part of their profit. And simply like recovering took a while, but as they're coming back, I think that a lot of these casinos actually turn themselves into offering online gaming. I think that's a good step. And then also basically trying to, as we're back to kind of like a quote unquote normal life, we're going back to like they're hosting more events and just getting people to like um promoting their work more as well. I just think that as time goes on, I think gambling is an industry that will continue to grow.
Yeah, so moving on to some sort of like what we feel like the trend of these casinos and hotels will be, especially on Las Vegas, which is the economy is just dominated by the strip, which is just like a length of a road. And it's not a very large place if you look down from like a satellite view. It's just the strip and then Las Vegas, which you don't really go when you're visiting Las Vegas. So, what do you see as the future of the casino business and hotel business in Las Vegas? And especially considering new competition on like online gambling and also new technology that is evolving, such as like metaverse or VR, anything related to VR. Um, and also like simply consumer preferences that are changing. Like more and more people are coming overseas to Las Vegas, stuff like that. So, what do you think the future holds for these markets?
That's definitely a very interesting question to like speculate on what trends will happen in the future. And to kind of go off one of the first like things you mentioned about what will happen, like what will these hotels and businesses do to adjust? I think a lot of what will happen, like what we've kind of already started seeing, is that there's going to be a lot more diversification. So like at the very beginning of when Vegas started, it was very much like focused on casino gambling heavy because other regulations in other states, like they literally just could not have casinos and gambling. So that was kind of like their thing that they really specifically focused on. And like today, they're still known for that, but it's just more diverse. And I think going into the future, they will try to diversify their things to do, I guess, a little bit more because as COVID showed us, like what if people can't really go there for gambling, casinos, etc., tourism, things like that, then their entire economy kind of just collapses a little bit. And something a little bit like sideline tidbit. So this summer I did research at the National Institute of Standards and Tech, so at NIST, and I looked at small businesses, but the concept really does apply for like all businesses in general. As like COVID-19, depending on the impact for a business, really kind of changed the way people think about like what they should be doing for the future and what they're concerned about. And one thing we found was that like diversification was pretty important and like they're changing the way that they have these things like based off of what they learned in COVID basically. And that's like a very dumbed down version of the research there, but that's kind of like what happened. And definitely, I think like you can see this happening in Vegas because they're no longer so much like, okay, like if you come to Vegas, you're going to have fun in our casinos. You're going to like have fun gambling and spending in our, like blackjack, things like that. So I think there's going to be a lot more diversification, a lot more restaurants, a lot more shopping. And like you definitely can still see that like Caesar's Palace, there's a whole like shopping mall there. There's just different things like that, like the M&M shops, Coca-Cola I think is also there. So we're going to see more of that because they just want to make sure like they're protected against whatever happens and like they're not just trying to put all of their eggs into the one basket that's casinos and gambling, especially as new technology arises.
Yeah, definitely agree. We can definitely see like more diversification in the future. And also like casinos will still be like sprawling up on like the strip. We obviously like there's still like a lot of like space on the strip for casinos to develop. Like I think I don't know how to pronounce this correctly, but Fontainebleau, Las Vegas was I think it was a 15-year project. It's set to actually release later this year with hotel, casino, and restaurant. It's actually the first luxury hotel to open in Las Vegas in more than 15 years. So we can definitely see a lot of like casinos that are still like opening up. But this time, instead of just like a run like a standard like casino or something like that, they're implementing more like features such as like hotel. Obviously, you can see a lot of like that diversification. I think some casinos and hotels also like open like a theater. So like for example, when I was in Las Vegas I think a few years ago before the pandemic, like I was in Caesar's Palace and I think there was like a theater there and we got to watch one of David Copperfield shows and that was like really fun. So I think that is also like another way for hotels and companies and casinos to diversify in on the strip. And also like due to this like tourism rise, we could also see like other like industries like moving to like Las Vegas. Like Ivan obviously mentioned F1 moving. The Oakland Raiders relocated a few years ago and became the Las Vegas Raiders. They built a whole Allegiant Stadium. It's one of the biggest stadiums in the NFL. And we can definitely see on top of like gambling and like hotels, all of those like profitable like tourism industries like sports and maybe like other activities are also going to start moving into Las Vegas.
Yeah, I think in the future there's definitely going to be like I think the casino industry will grow, but I think they're also going to expand in terms of other areas in terms of tourism as well. They're going to open different shopping centers. They're going to add more entertainment, more concerts. I know they already have like lots of music, lots of sporting events down in Las Vegas as well. I think these different casino owners, they're going to be they're going to do whatever they can to kind of match what consumers want, and just they want as many people to spend as much money as possible down there. And I just see them doing whatever they can to get people to spend that money.
We can definitely see a rapid shift in how business in Las Vegas, especially on the strip, has changed over the last decades. And moving on to some sort of takeaways, definitely the biggest takeaway for me is how business in Las Vegas isn't only casinos and only gambling. And even though it might be the makes up the majority of the revenue that like maybe like MGM Resorts or even Caesars, these like really big companies, their mostly revenues come from owning these casinos. A lot also it's in like you shouldn't forget that they are hotels, they are resorts. They earn a significant portion of their money outside of casinos um through having a hotel, through having people living in those rooms, through having people using their malls, going to restaurants, going to bars, just having a good time, which is kind of defined by Las Vegas. So, what are some other takeaways that you guys have?
Yeah, one of my biggest takeaways is that as technology changes and impacts our lives and society differently, I think Vegas, the Strip, their entire industry definitely will see effects and they will see impacts, but it's not just like a stagnant thing, right? Like they are evolving as companies because that's what they're made to do. And I think it's still going to be like a very big industry and like they're going to adjust to it like by diversifying what they're known for. Like you don't really just go to Vegas to gamble and make money per se, right? Like I think one of the biggest takeaways I got was that you don't go to Vegas for only gambling, like for only casinos. I don't think many people at all go solely because they're like, okay, I have $500. My goal is to make this into $700. Like that's my only goal for like the next 2 nights, right? Like I'm sure there are people, but that's not a big portion of people there. I think it's like that entire atmosphere. Like you want to have fun in Vegas because gambling in Vegas, like I said before, is not the same as gambling in middle of Arkansas, middle of Louisiana. Well, Louisiana might be a little bit different. Gambling like Wyoming per se, right? So I think like that entire atmosphere and like what Vegas is known for isn't only just making money in a slot machine, things like that. And I think that's going to be really important moving forward. Like the entire experience, everything coming together is going to be extraordinarily important, especially as technology starts to replicate what people are seeing or like what they can see in Vegas regarding like specific things, but like everything put together, like all the attractions, going to see the flamingos, going to see like what Paris is like, going to see the dancing water fountain in front of Bellagio, like that's all things that people see, like even though their main goal might be to go gambling, right? So like that's something an online platform can't replicate. So that entire experience together will be very important in holding together for Vegas.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that takeaway. One of my other takeaways was that like it was like really interesting to see how big like the employment like industry is within like the Las Vegas like tourism industry. Like obviously like employment in like casinos in Las Vegas is like pretty high, 25%. And also like on top of that, there's also people that are working in like those like diversified parts of those casinos, such as hotels and restaurants. So that's also like like really interesting to see the growth of like that throughout Las Vegas. And also another takeaway I have is like, I guess we, I guess the COVID pandemic really showed how like risky this like tourism reliance really is for Las Vegas. Like obviously when Las Vegas like closed down due to COVID, like unemployment rates reached really like I think it reached an all-time high at like 33%, I think. But still it contributed to like a really like negative impact for like Las Vegas as a city and like and the companies that are operating casinos there. So definitely like even though tourism is like a really big thing, we're also seeing a lot of more like tourist attractions like I guess the F1 and NFL that are also like moving to Las Vegas area, but we also like I think that Las Vegas will still need to like implement like more like I guess like more parts of like their city that's like attractive, but also like need to like find a way to like make those like things that can still like last if there's like major fluctuations in like the economy or just like current events in general.
My biggest takeaway was kind of like how the casinos and the gambling industry is going to like kind of how they already bounced back from COVID and how they're going to kind of continue to progress in the future. I just think that they have such a big economic impact on the city of Las Vegas and like Nevada in general. I just think just like not only with gambling, like the tourism and the hotels and all that is just floated by their gambling industry. And I just think that the only way from here is up, and then they're only going to grow from here. And I think they're going to expand into even more restaurants and shopping centers, and it's just going to be such a big tourist destination. And yeah, that's my biggest takeaway for today.
Yeah, and thank you guys for tuning in to this first part of how business works in Las Vegas, especially on the strip. And in the next episode, we'll talk more about a somewhat less unknown topic, which is about real estate. Thank you, and make sure to tune in for part 2.